Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Charles Schultz, and this is the Randomizer. And tonight we have a very interesting term that almost nobody has heard of. It's something you don't hear of very often in the world, has a very obscure origin, ceraunics. So, what is ceraunics? Well, basically, it's an ancient Greek term that means thunder and lightning. And there actually is a science, a study of ceraunics. And so we're going to have a little fun with this tonight. There are many interesting aspects of this. Why is thunder such an interesting noise? Why does it drive some people and some animals to distress? And what is it about it? So we have some interesting things to talk about that. And also interesting things that result from lightning and thunder, the process itself. So let's get down to business here. I want everybody to go to Schultz Laboratories or universesciencecenter.com. Join us, examine our galleries and our material, interact with it, and learn about it, and see how it can be very useful in your life, teaching your kids, teaching yourself. There's an educational facility unlike anything else you'll find anywhere, completely virtual, and it works with your Oculus or with your laptop. And I think that if you get in there, you're going to get really excited about it. And if you are a teacher or you have some skill you've learned and you want to share it with people, we can set up a virtual classroom or gallery for you to use so you can share your expertise with people all around the world and show off some of the things you've done. I think you'll find this an amazing venue, and it's an easy way to spread information in a way that's engaging and fun. Kids love fun, they love video games. They get them in here, you get them in here, and they're going to get hooked on playing with the equipment, the exhibits, and we're adding new things all the time. So join us, sign up, become a member, take our classes. Every weekday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, join us for the randomizer. We've got that going on right now. Bring your questions and answers and talk to us. And tonight, our term is ceraunics. So, what is it? Well, when you think about noises in general, there are certain classifications of sounds that you or an animal can easily sort out. At the high frequency end, you have things like squeaks or whistles or whines, and those tend to be high frequency, either short duration or drawn out, a whistle or a whine noise, and it's easy to identify. Then you have white noise sounds like a hiss noise or a thump sound, which is like an impact, lower frequency. Interesting. And rattle noises, where you have a repetitive sort of a little high frequency, random, a mixture of noises. A rattle can have a number of different sounds, but it's a very distinct set of noises. A tone is easy to identify. You have one frequency perhaps that continues for a while, such as holding a note on an organ or a piano or striking a string on a guitar. A bell sound. Bell sounds are characteristic because they have an impact, but then they continue for a while, the ringing. What's most interesting about a bell sound is it has an odd harmonic structure, 5/3. And this is what gives a bell its very characteristic sound. And that's something interesting to play with. We might talk about that sometime. Then you have sounds that are not particularly high frequency. They can have short durations, like a tapping noise, or you can have a crack noise, which is very abrupt, tends to be high frequencies, and a mix of white noise. And then you have a bang, which is like a balloon popping is a pop noise. A bang would be more like something striking something with a lot of force, or an explosion. And then you have a boom. And a boom is very, very different. It's deep, rolling, echoing, and it's almost all low frequency noises. Boom noises set themselves apart from all the others very distinctly. In nature, there are just a handful of things that will produce that sort of booming noise. If you go to the beach, like what's behind me now, you'll hear the tide crashing and it will make a boom noise. But the boom doesn't echo for very long, it doesn't last very long, and it doesn't have a great deal of intensity. In nature, there are a number of things that will produce thunder. And the first thing that comes to mind, obviously, is lightning. And lightning, of course, has a huge electrical discharge, and what the lightning does is it literally ignites the air along the path of the discharge. The lightning bolt ignites and superheats the air, and the explosion is not from one point, but it is stretched out along the length of the lightning bolt. And so the result is this explosion takes off. It booms, it echoes off the landscape, and it rolls, and it's a long, drawn out process. Thunder has that characteristic long, drawn out sound because it's mostly low frequencies and usually involves a lot of echoing. And lightning is the quintessential source of thunder. Now, there are three other interesting and easily recognized sources of thunder in nature. And one of them, of course, would be a volcano. It has an explosive noise and a roar associated with it. So it's a very thundering like noise. And the other thing about an explosion from a volcano is it does tend to echo off nearby lands such as mountains and valleys. So it does make a very clear thundering sound. Water roaring over a waterfall can produce that noise. And landslides can perform the same function. One of the most powerful forces producing thunder isn't even the lightning, though. It is actually an earthquake. So the earth itself can produce this sound. And when you feel it and hear it, and this is the most important thing, you feel it inside. It makes your insides rattle. So when we hear thunder, we recognize that it is caused by something massive and powerful. And our sensory system is tuned, as well as our emotions, to react in a very specific way to this sound. So over time, we've come up with man-made sources of thunder. Explosives can do a very creditable task of producing thunder, and it often happens when a series of explosions are set off, such as in strip mining, or clearing a rock face, or digging a tunnel with explosives. The other thing that produces the most thunder-like noise that you're likely to encounter, and one that goes on and on, is the launch of a rocket. And if you've ever been near launches for instance, the space shuttle when it was still in business, then you know what I'm talking about. Another sound that just literally goes right into your guts. It shakes your insides. Amazing that we respond to this noise the way we do. And there's an easily explained reason for this. In nature, we have the ability to detect certain frequencies that don't normally happen very often. And of course, thunder, lightning, earthquakes, these are things you generally want to get away from if you're a wild animal. And we often use the sound of thunder through speakers or explosives or firecrackers to drive off birds or animals from fields when they're eating our crops or damaging the crops. So we use the sound of thunder for that. But one of the things that's really outstanding to us and our neurological systems is the sound of around 10 hertz or so. And this is because you may notice if you're lying in bed, your head's on the pillow, it's very quiet, and sometimes when you move, you hear a creaking noise from within your body. This is a sound that it's very difficult for humans to normally hear because the bottom end of our hearing range cuts off at about 20 hertz. 10 hertz is about half of that. But when we sense it, it can actually give us a sort of an ominous sense or one of dread. In fact, in many theatrical productions years ago, people would inject subsonics with large speakers and amplifiers, 10 hertz noises, and it would induce the sense that something was coming. There's a dreadful noise. When we did planetarium shows, I often would inject a 10 hertz sound in the theater when we had something particularly ominous happening in the show, and it had a great psychological effect on people. So what's the deal? 10 hertz is a sound of muscles, and predators such as sharks or even bears will listen. Large cats, feral cats, lions, tigers, and jaguars will listen for the 10 hertz sound because it is the sound of muscles moving, and they can use it to detect the sound of prey or other predators. Sharks listen to the 10 hertz tone in the oceans, which I think I mentioned before in one of the previous episodes we've done, and they will home in on it because it's the sound of animals moving. It's very characteristic of life forms, moving muscle tissue, and not some other form of nature making this sound. So 10 hertz is a creaking noise of muscles in action. Predators look for it, they use it to track their prey down. We hear it and we shy away from it because it generally isn't good news for us. As animals made of bone and gristle and meat, we know that we're very edible to some other animals, and it is in our nature to shy away from this noise. Now, there's a very positive effect from thunder as well. And one thing I didn't mention about ceraunics is we have gone to great efforts to produce the sound of thunder for theatrical effects and in movies. And in the old movies, you'll notice they will take a sheet of metal and flexible metal and they'll shake the end of it and make a rumbling sort of a noise. In other cases, they would use something like a kettle drum and they'd rumble the big, large palm-like drumsticks on it because it had a soft impact and a thundering echo to it. Some of the thunder-making machines they've had have been literally drum tympani, the skin of the drum, the head of the drum, the membrane, I should say. And the membrane has been struck with wheels with varying lengths of drumsticks with soft ends on them to produce the sound of thunder when you ran a crank. So a lot of creative effort went into making the sounds of thunder. Today, of course, we can simply sample the sound digitally, or we used to do it on recording tape, and play it back through an amplifier. So a lot of times when you want to make the sound of thunder, you will put large subwoofers around an area, tie them to massive amplifiers, and play back the sound through it. In the case of earthquakes or explosives, we can actually use ceraunics to hear inside the planet and create images of the interior of our globe. So using this method, shock waves from earthquakes traveling through the ground, through the crust and through the mantle, surface waves and deep waves allow us to image the interior of our planet using thunder. So this is a sonic imaging technique that uses natural and man-made methods. When you're prospecting for iron or gold or oil, it is common to drill a few small holes, place charges in them, and then fire them, and have seismic listening devices, sensors all over the ground, and record the echoes of the features in the ground. Because of the different material, rock layers, densities, more or less moisture in the soil, the propagation of sound through the rock and through the minerals and through the soil can produce an image very much like a bat will use or a dolphin will use to image the world around them. One other interesting feature, which I meant to get to, and this is a very fascinating one, thunder is a sign that nature is producing plant fertilizer. When cosmic rays, particles from space, travel through our atmosphere, they create charged pathways. These are from the wreckage of particle collisions, nuclear particles literally from a cosmic ray striking an atom in the atmosphere and fracturing it. And the charged pieces fly off in all directions. They create the forking branches in lightning. So these charged particles create conductive pathways through the air that make it very easy for the charge of electricity stored in the clouds and the air to jump through this pathway and reach the ground. And that is what creates the ragged bolts of lightning that we see. Those eruptions of energy burn the nitrogen and oxygen in the air and produce nitrous oxides and nitric oxides. These go into solution in the fine droplets of rain and become a weak solution of nitric acid. This rains down to the ground and fertilizes all the plant life on our planet. Now it's estimated that if we did not have lightning, only 10% of the plant life we see on Earth would be alive today. In fact, roughly half of the nitrogen that existed in our original atmosphere appears to be bound up in the forms of organic life on our planet. So if you look at the nitrogen in the atmosphere of Venus, there's roughly 140% of the nitrogen that's present on our planet in our atmosphere. This is interesting because it means that it's quite likely that the nitrogen came from similar sources, ammonia trapped deep underground, broken chemically, and released into the atmosphere as the gas is vented out of earthquakes, seams, volcanoes, eruptions of any sort. So this gas ends up on our atmosphere, and it ends up releasing this nitrogen. The nitrogen ends up burned and into the plant life and in your DNA, in the molecules in your body, and in that of all the life on our earth. So ceraunics, the starting point, thunder and lightning, basic audio effects, seismology, and fertilizing life on earth. All of these things come together in one word. It's very fascinating when you think about it. So, ceraunics is an interesting term, and it goes in a lot of different directions, and it can be a lot of fun to study. So if anybody has any questions about ceraunics or any other technical issue, the floor is open. In the meanwhile, I'm going to encourage you to go to the Universe Science Center, walk around and enjoy yourself, sign up and become a member, and support our efforts to take virtual educational facilities to everybody everywhere on Earth. It's a great and noble cause, bringing education to people who really want it. Well, if you have any questions, the floor is open. Meanwhile, I'm going to read my statement for the day. It is from Psalms 143, verse 10. Teach me to do your will, for you are my God. Your spirit is good. Lead me in the land of uprightness. Very simple, very inspiring. Well, I don't see any questions on the floor. I do encourage you to bring your questions to us every weekday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Randomizer and join us. Have fun with it. Oh, I see something coming up. Okay, no, it's a comment. Thank you. Thank you very much. The comment said excellent. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. We're going to do this again tomorrow. So join us at 6 p.m. I hope you have a wonderful evening. And as usual, make the world a better place. We'll see you next time.